Solo mining is the embodiment of the original dream, a defiant act of individual sovereignty where one person, one node, and one miner take a stand against centralized control. We don't just mine for profit, we mine for principle. We mine for ourselves and for each other and for the unyielding spirit at Bitcoin's core. Join us as we dig in and hold the line. This is the Home Mining Podcast. Hey everyone, 2Sats here, and before we start this episode, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, Bitcoin Well, the best place in the US and Canada to stack sats today. Bitcoin Well offers a fully non-custodial way to buy your Bitcoin and have it sent straight to your Lightning wallet, your on-chain wallet, and even right to cold storage. No middlemen, no crazy fees, just cold hard sats sent right to your wallet. Join Bitcoin Well by scanning the QR code on the screen or with the link in the description to start stacking sats today. Also, when you use our link to join, you'll receive points and have a shot at winning up to 1 million sats from the Bitcoin Wishing Well. Or, alternatively, you might want to use those points toward the new BitX Gamma from the one and only Solo Satoshi. Also, during the episode, keep your Lightning wallets ready because Bitcoin Well has given us free sats to give away during all of the episodes of the podcast. All you have to do is watch and be the first person to scan the QR code that shows up during the show to win. If you are the lucky winner, drop us a comment and let us know. And for more chances, sign up to the Bitcoin Well and support the podcast with the link in the description. Now, let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome back to the Home Mining Podcast by Solo Satoshi. I'm your host, 2Sats, and today I'm joined by Bitcoin Dandy on X. His name is Dan, and this is his first ever podcast appearance, but he's got a wealth of knowledge, and I know you've seen his builds floating around on X on Twitter, so I'm excited to have him on to deep dive on a whole host of different topics and to show off the epic build that you can see in his backdrop today. Dan, welcome to the show. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on, and it's great to be here, and I'm super excited to talk about the build. Super excited to talk about home mining, talk about Bitcoin in general. I mean, as my wife will say, that she's very happy that I'm a part of this community much more now than just sitting in our front room talking her ear off about Bitcoin. But yeah, man, I've been in the Bitcoin space since 2011, and a lot of my history ultimately has just been studying exactly what it is and what its purpose is and how important it's been. I mean, I was there. I remember seeing sub $100 Bitcoin, and I was 15 at the time. And my uncle just came up to me and was just like, "Hey, man, have you heard about Bitcoin and like what this is?" And he just kind of showed it to me, and I thought it was cool. I just was like, I've never heard of internet money before, and like, is it like how can I spend it? And he just kind of was like, well, you can't really spend it, but it has value. It's like $80 right now, and why don't you go just study it and come talk to me about it after you do a little research and everything. And so I did. I went and studied it, and I learned about Satoshi and just how he's just this anonymous guy who just created this currency because he believed in it. He believed that the economic system was so corrupt and that we deserved something better and the separation of state and money. And so, at the time I was a pretty liberal kid. And so I believed in a lot of very liberal values. I believed in, separation of church and state and just this idea of not concentrated power. But at 15 at the time, I'm just kind of a dude who just wants to have fun and, go be with my friends and go to parties and stuff. So I didn't really think much of it at the time. But my uncle, he said he mined a few back when GPU mining was still a thing. And so he had a couple floating around, and just as the years went on and I started studying it a bit more, I got a wallet, and I understood my first wallet was Exodus wallet. I still have it to this day. And, he's like, "Oh man, you're you're so into Bitcoin. I didn't think you'd be into it. Do you want one? Uh, and I was like, sure, why not? Like, and he gave me a whole coin at $100 at the time. And I was just, again, stupid kid. I think I was maybe 20 when he gave me one. And it was $100. And my grandmother, we were all sitting in Los Angeles, and she's just like, well, you know what? Why don't you go buy a fake ID with it so you could come drinking with all of us at the bars and stuff? And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Like, I mean, like I heard about Silk Road and all the crazy things you could buy on Silk Road. So I went on and I bought a fake ID for $100. That was one Bitcoin at the time. And I actually have it here with me right now. And I call it my $100,000 fake ID. Over the years, I kept calling it as Bitcoin increased it. It's like, oh, this is my $10,000 ID, $60,000 ID. And so I kicked myself. I've been meaning to turn it into kind of like a ticker on my wall. I'll mount it one of these days and
Yeah,
put a
yeah.
digital ticker and just watch the number go up and just, eventually maybe
Cry.
cry, cry as it becomes my $1 million plus ID at this point.
Oh
Or
man.
hopefully one day, I really do honestly think that it is just going to absorb so much value, so much fiat value. I mean, I never would have dreamed it was $100,000. Like back in the day, that was a pipe dream. And so, yeah, that's just kind of my background. I was just a kid, and eventually, 2020 rolled around. I was doing a bunch of other crypto projects. I was um, mining in helium with the helium
Oh yeah.
miners, and I was right at the peak when you could get just stupid amounts of helium that were worth $25, and I was making maybe $1,000 a day on that doing helium mining. And eventually, I started seeing it kind of top, and I was like, you know what, let's maybe pull out of there and recycle it back into Bitcoin. And then that was when I was kind of like, okay, I think crypto in and of itself might not be a safe bet, and I'm just going to go all in on Bitcoin. And that was around 2020. I think we were sitting at maybe 16K in Bitcoin, and I was able to just fold it all of my crypto stuff back into it. And I was like, okay, I've done some good, financial engineering. I figured it out, and as soon as I was able to fold it all back in, that was like, okay, perfect, Bitcoin only. Everything else is a shit coin, and I'm never going to touch it ever again.
That is some divine timing. I'll say that. That is very, very good instinct that you had there. Because a lot of people don't think that the gravy train ends with these altcoins, right? I also
Yeah.
mined helium. That was the first thing I ever touched in mining. I had a personal training client of mine that his friend mined Ethereum back in the day, and then he got into mining helium, and they were telling me about it, and I was like, sure, let's toss one of these up on the roof on the antenna. And
Yep.
we were
Yep.
up there in the middle of winter trying to tie this freaking thing to the antenna. And yeah, it was very bad. It did not it was not consistent for me. It was just not reliable, and I was like, this seems like a waste of time and money, and like it's kind of junky. But they, depending on where they put these different nodes or these miners, they were making some good profits if it was in
Oh
like a
yeah.
high traffic area. But yeah, for me, mine was like always offline, and it just had connectivity issues, and I think the hardware was not very good back in the day. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I definitely
Especially.
wish I was
Yeah.
Bitcoin mining back then, but we all get into it at the price and the time we deserve, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. And yeah, I was lucky at the time with the helium mining just because I was able to put one at my grandparents' place in California. I was able to put some in Colorado Springs. I was able to put, I mean, I just peppered all over the place. So at least my traffic was diversified enough. But then came its crash. I think its crash was around 21, if I remember correctly. I think that was when we had a big altcoin slip. I don't remember alt seasons very regularly, just because I remember it watching tumble so bad during the pandemic that it was just like, this is off my radar, 100%.
Yeah,
Especially
that was
now.
a good lesson when those things started to crash. That was a good lesson. If you were able to sell the top and roll everything into Bitcoin like yourself, fantastic timing, great move, and makes sense why you can now, go ahead and build something like what you've built out, and you secured those profits. I mean, for a period of time, that $1,000 a day or whatever that you said I mean, that's huge, massive.
Oh yeah.
You're not making that small scale at home with Bitcoin mining, so it was a good opportunity, but then to roll it back into Bitcoin, into hard money, into something with longevity, very crucial. So, good that you took advantage of it while it was there, and then realized, hey, this is a shit coin, and managed to get out. So that's a cool origin story.
Yeah. No, it was definitely, it felt like divine intervention. I just followed my gut on it with it, honestly. The sheer amount of studying I did on projects and just hearing about all the dev drama behind the scenes with so many altcoins. And I'm sitting here looking at Bitcoin. I'm like, well, I won't say there's no dev drama with Bitcoin, but it's interesting to just watch it chug along as if it's just this untouchable living organism that Satoshi just blessed us all with. And in comparison to, all the shit coins that exist out there, I mean, it's there's nothing else like it. Say, like Sailor always says, there is no second best.
Yeah, it's largely unbothered by any amount of drama or conflict or anything. Obviously, there's times in Bitcoin like the block size wars, and what we're seeing now with the core versus knots debate and stuff. But largely, this thing just chugs along, and it's unaffected by these things in general. It always seems to survive no matter what. And you only have to look at one altcoin season to know that that is not the case for everything else, and thus I agree. There is no second best. Hopefully you only have to touch altcoins once and see like, oh, it's $40 and it's zero.
Yep, and
For
it's
you
gone.
to like clue in. Yeah, exactly. For you to clue in and be like, okay, I mean, why am I doing this? It's you're inevitably shooting yourself in the foot when you're dabbling in alts. So if you can get in and secure your profits and not incur those huge drops, you might look like a genius, but nobody survives those altcoins unscathed. So it's good to secure those profits when you were in it and roll her back into Big Daddy Bitcoin.
Exactly, exactly. And yeah, I wish I was mining at the time back then, Bitcoin as well. Again, vastly ignorant compared to the amount of research I've put into it as of late. And just really understanding a lot of the utility behind mining, and its connection to energy, and just really finally tying the pieces of together that Bitcoin is just a unit of account for energy. I mean, that's its value anchor. And like, as soon as I finally understood that, I was like, okay, there will never be anything as valuable as Bitcoin, just because of the sheer like notion that that is really what it is. Um, but again, back in the day, um, it was just so expensive for me personally to run a mining system, out of a home office, and just spend that kind of money on a mining system, where you're going to get one unit that's going to be so loud sitting in your office. And at the time that nobody was really thinking about repurposing the energy or repurposing the heat, and exactly how do you properly vent it. At the time I don't even think there were people 3D printing duct exit ducts for the front of like a S19 to pump it out of the room and everything. So I just, from then to now, seeing the type of innovation in the mining space has been inspirational, and it's why I wanted to put something together, like you see in the background here, um, because it is just so much more accessible now to create something like this and have it be relatively cost effective in terms of parts. I know a lot of people are still kind of griping about the idea that home miners' price per terahash is still a little out of control compared to some of the bigger units, and I think it's a fair criticism. but it's also still new technology. It's being done by innovators, which are trying to have to deal with tariffs, and they're trying to have to deal with manufacturing at the United States level, like bringing it back to the home front. So, and then of course we have tariffs going on. So, I understand that respectively price per terahash for some units like this is going to be a little more expensive than what, the guys in China are pumping out because they can do it like lickety split and they've been doing it for 16 years.
Yeah, great points. And this is something I was going to touch on with you later on, but since, we're already there, let's just kind of dive in on that now. It's you hit it you mentioned a great point, and I see a lot of people loving what you've built there, and I see a lot of people kind of giving it some disrespect, a little bit of FUD because of what you just said, right? The price per terahash, this can't be cost effective. It's not worth it. This is overkill. Why would you do that? That's kind of dumb. But like you just said, the price per terahash in home mining is elevated because we don't have access to the kind of the parts and the hardware that we need. It's going to come in time, and we're already seeing it. Things like Proto, hopefully, is going to open up a whole new sort of set of possibilities, right? So it has come down. Like a Bitaxe, when a Bitaxe Gamma or a Supra first sold, those were hundreds of dollars, and now they're down to like $100 per Gamma, right?
Yep.
$110 per Gamma. So this is coming down as that bottleneck of control on the hardware, specifically the ASICs chips, is getting alleviated, and new possibilities are popping up, and that's inevitably just going to drive the prices down, and things like this are going to become more and more viable, possible, and popular because the access to the ASIC chips, and also the heat repurposing, like you said, is something that only in the last few years has really become viable and popular, and all of the great work that people are doing to make this extra set of utilities come out of the heat and the miners, it's really starting to come to the forefront. So, like, imagine 5 or 10 years from now, what's going to be possible if we look back at what was possible 5 years before now.
Oh, absolutely. And you can see with other technological hardware over time that the price of hardware always comes down. I mean, storage is always a beautiful example. I mean, back in the day, you'd get a floppy disk, and a floppy disk would have hardly any storage space on it. And it would be, I wouldn't even know I was alive. Well, I was alive at the time. I just wasn't thinking in terms of as a 5 year old, like, oh, what's the price of this floppy disk? But it storage wasn't cheap, and I remember as a child having to manage my space for all of my computer games. My mom built my first hardware PC, like desktop, for me, and I would always try and play games, and she would just be like, "Okay, you got to be careful because you're gonna run out of space fast, dude. And I know you want to play games, but it's not like you can't have all these games on here. You gotta have to manage your storage, and you gotta pick what you want to play." So, watching it go from a floppy disk to multiple terabytes, and those terabytes being affordable now, it's going to be the same way with hardware with Bitcoin. I mean, like, again, Bitmain is a perfect example. They keep innovating, they keep developing, and their previous machines become cheaper because they're not as efficient energy wise just yet, but I mean they're still viable, useful tools that have good terahashes. And if you can figure out ways to offset those costs, then a machine like that, sure, like to the point of the other guys kind of giving me FUD, they make a fair point. Yes, an S19 is cheaper and you get all of those terahashes, but is it as efficient? Is it as is it as power consuming as these home miners right now? And that's where my arguments come in ultimately too, where I have absolute full control over every single unit at my disposal in here, to such a degree that it's compartmentalized and modularized, where now my machine, if it dies, I'm losing 5 terahashes instead of hundreds of terahashes. And that's where I find the extra premium cost on some of these devices right now is that it gives me flexibility and modularity, not only to expand, but also to tinker and build out and really just ultimately look at my devices and go, oh, okay, well, this one is not as efficient as one that I could buy right now that might have an XT30 cable as opposed to a barrel jack. Because right now, the barrel jacks in there are generating way more heat than the XT30s. If I replaced all of those units that are barrel jacks with XT30s, I'm bringing down my heat and it's much more efficient for the rest of my system if all of that heat isn't being built and, compartmentalized in the rig right there. Um, so it's just this flexibility and modularity. I love watching the innovation in this space. I love seeing that everybody is figuring out some of these huge problems. And then me, as somebody who's building out systems like this, I can go to them and talk to them very casually. I mean, it's really easy to just say, hey, it's much more efficient if you did something that could help fix this particular problem for me as a miner. So then I can go ahead and have a more efficient system and share these builds with everybody, put up on a GitHub page all the parts and build outs and everything, and just find more efficient ways to create cost effective rigs like this so other people can also see that you don't have to be limited anymore by Bitmain. You don't have to be limited anymore uh, because these modular flexible units exist, and you can scale to 100 terahashes if and so long as that you just slowly iterate to get to that point. Because one of the biggest things is that I was never an electrician. I was never an HVAC guy. I had no knowledge whatsoever going into this project. 7 months later, after just refinement, studying, learning how to actually wire things and how to duct things appropriately, and I now have. I said in the post that it's 100 terahashes, but that's the ambition, is to scale to that. The limiting factor right now in most home offices is the circuits. If you have a 15 amp circuit, you're not getting past 60 terahashes. That's just flat out, your that's your ceiling right there. Because right now I have an Octax in there too. It is not pulling enough power to get to the 10 terahashes that it's rated for because the circuit is full.
Mm.
Um, so if you want to do something like this, then you're kind of dancing between both worlds of home mining and industrial scale mining, where you need to understand the limitations of your space if you're going to be doing something like this. But if you do want to expand and you do want to do a bigger mining system, homes still do have 20 amp circuits. You can still pull 240 volts out of the wall and do it correctly. And you can even go and buy an EcoFlow battery online right now, and that'll give you 240 volts while you're still plugged into the wall. That's the next step for this, is to get solar panels attached to it and plug it into that battery so I can offset costs and expand finally. And a rig like
Nice.
this, I think I can easily probably push it to 200 terahashes before I kind of start going, all right, this is fun and it's cool that it's in my office, but I do want to take it more seriously on an industrial level at some point, and really start looking at bigger builds and bigger infrastructure. I'm planning a big move to Tennessee so I can build out something like that. But we can get into that conversation a little later too, because I'm sure you want to ask me about those projects coming up.
Yeah, that's cool because I was actually just when you were talking about all of that, I was thinking about solar panels. That was sort of like the main thing bouncing around in my brain was like, okay, can this get hooked up with solar and then you have, kind of unlimited or a lot more free energy and what that would be able to unlock for you. So that's cool to know that that is sort of next up there. And then just circling back, I think you made some really good points that I didn't think about necessarily off the top of my head, where you were talking about the modularity of it, right? You sort of beat Proto to the punch with that. They're doing the same thing, right? That interoperability, that flexibility that you have is a fantastic selling point for what you're doing compared to just buying an S19 or something, or doing both. But the point is, if one of those hash boards goes or the whole machine goes versus if one of your bit axes or one of your nerd axes goes, It's a big difference in cost and repairs and just all of that stuff. And also factoring into that is you have open source on one side and you have closed source proprietary on the other side. Well, home mining, we know, is all about open source hardware, open source software, and we're only seeing more and more of that being built with Mujina and Ember One and Hydrapool and all these amazing things that are coming out of the 256 Foundation. So it's going to unlock this huge plethora of more interoperability, more modularity, and I think that's exciting. You're kind of building in alignment with that, in anticipation of that, and the principles are sort of at the forefront of that, which is I have open source, I can learn, I can tinker, I can go online, and I can kind of mess around with this stuff. With the proprietary stuff, you just don't have that same ability, right? So how important was that for you in factoring in, how you were going to approach building out these projects?
Oh, it was super important. I mean, the fact that when I first saw the bid axe, and that was my first introduction to it. I mean, really, the vision ultimately was when I first saw the bit axe online. I said, "How cool to be able to just build a modular, hot swappable system where I could just mount a ton of bit axes in some sort of rig or some sort of setup, and just if one dies, pop it out, pop in another one, and call it a day." Um, and go from there. And the initial vision, honestly, was trying to build something that I personally would be able to maybe share with somebody who is ultimately more normie in the space. Like, sure, they've heard of Bitcoin, they've heard you go buy some, but hey, have you ever heard about mining Bitcoin? How great it is that you could be a part of this mining pool and you could earn it, and you could redo all this heat. I had all these great ideas because I'd heard it online, and I had just been kind of congruently thinking about these ideas as they were coming out over these past 7 months while I was building this thing. And just so, one idea I would have, somebody would pop up and show up and be like, I've been doing that for a couple of years now. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, cool. But I mean, I love it. I love the congruency. I love the fact that we're all collaborating. I love that the fact that we're all innovating. It just allows us to far outpace proprietary systems and units in terms of innovation, because we're all congruently thinking of the same thing. How can this be better? How can this be more efficient? How can we get this so that way it's much more digestible for somebody who is just stepping into the mining space? And being able to buy something like this, that, like, let's say I built 50 of these things, I would love to sell one of these to somebody and just be like, all you got to do is just plug it in now. It's going to do this. It's going to have its own node. It's going to run on its own systems. We can sit there and teach you how to use it. And if you want us as a service to come in and take care of it on a technical level, because you might not be technically apt, we can do that. We could come in and we can service units and we could teach people slowly and surely. I mean, it's no different in my mind than having an HVAC system in your house, water heater. Everybody has the ability and the aptitude to learn how your home systems work. So why can't we just integrate these types of systems from Bitcoin into that home learning environment? And then eventually in the future, you're going to have a bunch of dads who are 60 plus years old who know how to change a sink and also happen to know how to swap out their hash boards. It's it's two things that should be coming together and going into the suburban lexicon of, yeah, like, I'm a dad and I know how to fix my house. I know how to fix these things that bring value and comfort to me and my family. That's how I view these modular systems and these modular bit axes, is that it's the bridge really needed to get normal people to understand and begin adopting mining as a utility ultimately. And you bring up Proto, and I was so excited to see that they just had power railed hash cards that you could just pull in and out of the chassis and everything. And the one thing that I kind of got a little flustered, and I started trying to dunk in the comments a little bit. I just was like, oh, why is it 90 terahashes per blade, you're really just missing out on an entire market, because this is what I was thinking of. I'm just like, think about the normal person. Stop thinking about the industrial scale. Go in and give me a small unit that I could set up that has 10 terahash blades that I could just sit and, take care of and swap in and out hot, no problem, and just have it be this intuitive piece of technology in your house that, 10 terahashes isn't going to break the bank compared to the hot swap of a 90 terahash blade. So it's just a really untapped market that I think, unfortunately, the industrial scale mining space is just completely overlooking, because if we want to decentralize mining, it should start at the home, and it should start with people learning how to use it. And you don't do that by giving them an industrial grade rig and just saying like, oh, look how easy it is to do this, but also it's like, thousands of dollars to hot swap your blade. No, give me like a $50 to $60 blade that I can hot swap, that's like 10 to maybe 25 terahashes, that doesn't make it difficult for me to continuously have uptime, but also just like I'm not losing too much terahash to the fault of a singular blade.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying for sure. So there are lots of great things to unpack there. One, I think something that you said is very important, which is this home mining stuff is very centric to the ideals and the original sort of ethos of Bitcoin, right? And this is where I hope the space continues to head. And like what you said, right, is like this should be just commonplace in the home. And I was talking with Tyler about that stuff. It's like the integration with the smart thermostats and the home assistant. It's like in 10 years time, this is just going to be like a normal everyday part of the like you said, the suburban lexicon. I like that a lot. You should just have that as part of your HVAC system, as part of your water heater, your pool heater, your your sauna or your hot tub, things like this, which we're seeing it now. But yeah, these builders, these developers like Proto, they are focused on the industrial and not the little person. But I do believe that the heat punk movement is fully focused on us, right? The everyday person. And it is the killer app for the normies. That is what's going to get the everyday person into it. It's not, oh, look, buy Bitcoin, number goes up. It's like you already need heat anyways. You can mine KYC free sats for your bloodline and offset the cost of heating all in
Yep,
one go, right? That's something you need anyways. So I think the education around that is going to be super critical. And in 10 years' time, it's going to look obvious because everyone's going to be wanting to do it or be doing it. And it's just going to be something that's in the background and most people don't even really think about it. They're just doing it because that's why wouldn't we be doing it that way? So I think that's
exactly.
what the education we try to provide on the podcast is like. In 10 years time, it's going to be very obvious, but look now and how can we build now so that it becomes sort of easy to do that as we progress. So I'm with you there 1,000%, and really excited about what you're building out and the way that you see things. So let's jump into the project back there. Tell me, what are you running in that cabinet, in that device? First of all, what is the container, and what devices are you running in there in terms of gammas, nerd axes, the whole gamut?
So right now it's a 22U sysrack server case. I wanted enough space. I figured 22U would be enough for me to be able to really figure out airflow and heat transfer, and it just seemed like the most intuitive thing to bring in cold air from the bottom, pump it out at the top like you see there. So it's 22U sysrack. I kind of skullduggered a few custom changes, because before I was running, I want to say 20 bit-ax gammas just on wall warts. Right, they were right next to me, and I just had an airflow system to keep them cool, because all they were doing was pumping hot air up, and then it was just making the office hot and recycling that heat and making a few of them, get a little too hot. They were right underneath the AC, so that was nice. But I bought these just PC fans. I had about 5 of them all hooked up to each other. I had 2 sets. One was taking cold air in and pushing it across the units, and then there was another set taking that hot air that it was being pushed into and pushing it away. So I had the idea. It was kind of intuitive, just the way that airflow was supposed to go. I took down that rig as I started buying nerd axes and my octax, because I was kind of like, well, as much as I love bit axes, they don't scale appropriately. I think scaling by 1 terahash and taking up all that space per unit is a bit excessive. And again, the price per terahash I was kind of iffy on. I know that it's pretty comparable for a nerd axe and then 5 gammas to be about the same price, but even then, $3.99 now price per terahash is getting pretty good. But I took those fans and I mounted them onto the bottom and the top to give extra airflow, because the fans that came with the case were just not cutting it by themselves. And then I got myself a 1U rack fan system to just take extra air from the bottom there to go up. Again, I bought that from Sysrax. I bought that on Amazon. Just a simple server case mount system, or air mount system. And then right now I'm running 6 barrel jack systems of NerdAxe Q++, and then I think 5 XT30 units, NerdAxes as well. I got those from Solo Satoshi. I picked up the barrel jacks from Crypto Cloaks and Pleb Source, and then I got an Octax from Ko Satoshi. So I'm running 11 units of NerdAxe Q++ is in there, and then 1 Octax. I had another one, but I kind of short-circuited it as I was just testing and everything. But I have the load split across 3 PSUs, so that way, we're not overloading one too much. Just because the PSUs are, because they're on that 12 or that 110 volt circuit back there, they really only can get up to about 900 watts as opposed to the full 1200. One of them's a meme well for the Octax. The other 2, I picked up a couple of HPs from Parallel Miner, and they had these great breakout boards where it's just really easy to put on the PCIe terminal blocks and just wire them in directly, and it's working out great. Everything is, flowing perfectly good. And then I'm just running a box fan to get some extra cool air during the day. And then I just picked up a register box and some duct work from Home Depot, a window mount from Home Depot. And then I picked up an inline fan as well to allow that hot air that congregates in the register box there to come out my window at that point.
Badass. I love that. And it's the best part of all of this is that you had no prior knowledge of any of this, and you just got busy, got your hands dirty, and started learning. And I really want this show to always serve as education and inspiration for people to do exactly that, man. Like, I was joking with, I think it was Antoine of 256 Heat, like, I had no interest in HVAC or any of these other things before I got into mining. And then mining pulls you into all these different little, subcategories of skill sets where you're like, okay, I need to learn a little bit more here and a little bit here and a little bit here. And then you put it all together and you have this really great amount of skills that, you wouldn't have otherwise had or cared anything about. And it all comes back to Bitcoin. And so that's it's really inspirational to see that you were able to garner all that knowledge and then actually turn it into something useful and beautiful as well. I mean, it's a gorgeous piece of equipment, beautiful setup that you've got, and I just love it. So, are you?
Appreciate that.
Yeah, man, really, it's good to see, because we have a lot of people that are like, building software, building hardware, writing books and things like that. But you're a pleb miner, right? At the heart of it, you are just a normal everyday dude that said, let me see what I can do with all these different things that people have created, put it all together, and this is what you've ended up with. And so I think that should serve as really good inspiration for people to follow along with the open source ethos, which is tinker, get your hands dirty, get involved, learn these different skills, and see what you can come up with, because somebody else out there is probably already doing something that you're wondering about, and you guys can jam and collaborate and which is again spirit of Satoshi. I feel like, and so getting that connection with other people who are building cool shit, and then iterating on top of that. I mean, that's what's going to be the accelerant on an already on fire space of developers and creators and things like that. You're really going to help push it forward by making builds like this, putting it out in the world, and seeing what everyone else is doing and going from there. So kudos to you for that. I want to ask you now, are you running a node with all of those?
Yes, I am running a node right now, but I don't find the amount of terahash that I have at my disposal right now um, worth solo mining. I know some people who are like, yeah, solo mine with your bidaxe, and like that's worth it because it's a lotto ticket. Um, as much as I'm frustrated with the people who are just completely focused on the ROI uh, based around mining, there's some merit to the logic behind that where, if you don't have a whole lot of terahash at your disposal, especially with the network difficulty right now, it can be a little demoralizing to not see you hit a block. And so, with a system like this, I personally am running an FPPS system, or I'm not running it, but I'm on Brains Pool. I really like Brains Pool. I like what they do there.
Okay.
Their math is awesome. I would love to get into that a little bit later about the economics of the way they have their pool set up in the way that I actually think it's important going forward. But with a system like this, I'm just doing FPPS with Brains so that way I can see the reward of just seeing those sats trickle in a little bit. Once I get to 100 terahashes, it's 4,100 sats a day. It's not much, obviously, but when we were at about 122K, I was seeing 66% margins on my cost, or on my energy cost to Sats income ratio. So that was
Okay.
great. I was like very pleased with myself that I'm sitting here in a room with a bunch of home miners just chugging along, and I'm making 66% margins. And then, you know, Bitcoin going up in the dollar going down in value, whereas Bitcoin's going up in value supposedly, is it's nice to just be able to sit there and say, yeah, sure, I'm making X amount of dollars a day. Over time, I learned though that it's not about the fiat; it's about the Sats, and the fact that I'm getting these Sats in, I'm getting hard money in. Um, it just feels like DCA into Bitcoin every single day. So not only do I do that with this rig, but I also pair it with my interest income from River. River is a great complementary investment saving, or it's a savings account that pays you out in Bitcoin every single month. Which those two things together, I was making maybe about $400 a month in extra income between that and River, um, for at around 122. So obviously we're not there right now, but I mean we know where it's all going. I am of the mind that I could pace myself and really just appreciate that I am being given hard assets. I'm giving it the hardest asset in the world
Mm-hmm.
every single day, and who knows what 4,100 sats is going to be worth in terms of food, goods, and services 10 years down the line. So, I'm 4,100 sats, in my opinion, is nothing to scoff at. And then if you just build that up alongside other revenue streams, um, then, there's, in my opinion, there's nothing really too much to worry about. You're building your little fortress. You can do it at home, and it's never been easier. It's never been more accessible than it is, in my opinion, today compared to just 5 years ago.
And it's going up forever, Laura. Forever.
It is for forever. But I
Yes.
mean, it's I wait for the day where we can watch everything flip. I'm very excited to watch people start denominating in Bitcoin
Well, you're
Like,
pre-positioning, right? Like what I really love what you were saying, because a lot of people do scoff at like, oh, why would you pool mine? And that was one of the questions that I did want to that I did have for you in terms of like, are you solo mining? Are you pool mining? Because a lot of people scoff at you if you're pooled mining with these and not lottery mining, right? And I personally have a little army of devices here. That I run, and I pool mine. I do as well, right? And it's because you're presented with like a fundamental question. Would you rather have a lottery ticket and be paid out zero? So would you rather have a shot at everything, right? That full block reward, or would you rather take the sure thing of being paid out every day, or however you have your structure set up with your own node and your Lightning wallet? If you're pooled mining, would you take a sure thing, or would you take a mystery gift, right? It's like you see those videos on YouTube sometimes. Do you want the $100 or do you want the thing in the mystery box, right? And
Mhm.
it really shows you a lot about human psychology, where people land on this. And I think it's exactly the same sort of proposition in home mining. Is like, do you want the 4,000 sats or so in your case every day, or do you want a chance at the big ticket, right? And it's like, you might go the rest of your life and never hit that block, or you could, but
Mhm.
you have a sure thing in hitting those sats every day. And your time horizons, your time preference is beautifully aligned with what Bitcoin really stands for, right? You've managed to align your personal time incentives and horizons in a good way, in my opinion, which is, if I'm stacking 4,000 sats every day and I multiply that by 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what could that potentially look like? So you're very patient. I try to be the same way, because I know it's in the spirit of Bitcoin. And yeah, if you want to run a few lottery miners, definitely. I'm not saying don't run some solo miners, some lottery miners, but I value every single sat. And since beginning home mining, I value every single sat a hell of a lot more than before I was mining,
Yep.
because I understand what goes into the
Yep.
process of mining. And like you were talking about with energy and stuff, it's like, once that sinks in, you really start to value every Satoshi a lot more. And so if I can get a couple hundred sats, a couple thousand sats every day, you're damn right I'm taking that.
Absolutely. And yeah, and again, like you said, it's not like you can't do both. You can't. In my opinion, I actually think that is the more logical thing to do. Is do a little bit of solo mining, do a little bit of home mining or pool mining, and having those work in congruency with one another is great, especially if you're going to be expanding like I want to, where it's like, okay, these can earn sats daily. The next rig can go ahead and solo mine. And as you just build and compound your terahash, eventually your time horizon on hitting that block goes down. And who knows? I mean, we've had people with I think, what was it, a couple of months ago or something, some dude with 20 terahash hit a solo block. Like, you can do it.
Yep.
You can 100% do it. It's not like it's not like it's impossible. It's just a probability equation, and your odds are still better than the Powerball by huge factorials, like huge factorials.
Yeah, absolutely. A guy with a nerd QX mining to Ocean with his own node, constructing his own block templates, hit that block, right? It is 1,000% possible. So it's something to definitely consider, right? Where you come down on that personally. For everybody, it's going to be a little bit different, but there's nothing saying that you can't do both. And as the cost of hardware comes down, the the amount that you're able to operate is going to go up if you so choose, and you can have a unit like you've got back there that is strictly pooled mining, and you could have another one that's just for solo mining. But I like the pooled mining in so many different ways, and especially when people are going to fudge you about like, oh, this is over the top, and it's like, well, you're actually getting an ROI once you've paid off the hardware, because you're pooled mining. If you're just lottery mining, you have no hope really, unless you hit that block of paying off
Or
that
hitting it.
hardware and then just being all in the green, right? So this is a long-term DCA strategy, and I love your patience around all of that.
Appreciate it. Having a kid made me very patient. So we were talking
Yes.
about kids before, and before the show, and one of the greatest things I will say is that having that child taught me that patience is definitely one of the best things that you can do in this space when you are doing anything, whether it's DCAing, whether it's building, whether it's waiting for your block. It's just a matter of patience and taking your time and realizing that, you could set these up and you could drip your sats, go have a cup of coffee on your patio, and everything's gonna be fine. I know we live in crazy times, and it feels so inviting to feel anxious and need to have it all right now. But the best things come to those who wait. It's a thing that's been true and has stood the test of time. And there's still never been a better time than right now to just start doing stuff like this, because everything's about to change. So you might as well just try some stuff and enjoy it while you're living it.
Well said, man. Well, we've got a host of other topics that we're going to dive into, but I'm going to take a little break to thank our sponsors, Bitcoin Well, the best place to stack non custodial or self custodial sats in the US and Canada. You can join using the link in our description to get some bonus points, which you can put towards a Solo Satoshi Bidax Gamma or a bunch of other great prizes. And you can use the Bitcoin Wishing Well to have your chance at 1,000,000 sats. And speaking of sats, we're going to give some away. So grab your Lightning wallet and have your Lightning wallet ready to scan the QR code that's going to come up on the screen here in a moment. All right, so we're just going to toss a coin into the Bitcoin Wishing Well. We're going to redeem our 500 points, and the first person who scans this QR code is going to win 515 sats. Not bad, not bad.
Get my phone.
Yeah, grab that quick, Dandy. 515 sats. Go ahead and scan that. And if you are the lucky winner, let us know by dropping a comment on the video. And if you weren't the lucky winner, sign up using our QR code or the link in the description to have a chance at 1,000,000 sats. All right, let's get back into this episode. All right, man. So you said you wanted to talk a little bit about Brains Pool and why you like that so much and the sort of the numbers there. I think this will be a huge topic that's going to be very interesting for a lot of people, because I haven't had anybody on the show yet that's sort of broken down like the different costs of these different pools or what they found to be most useful or effective. I personally mine with Ocean, so that's sort of what I know, but I would love to hear more about why you choose to go with Brains Pool and what you're getting out of all of that.
So, excuse me, sorry, just catch. I don't have any water here, so I'm just rawing the talking here. But yeah, Brains Pool. I like Brains Pool. They've been around for a really long time. I can't recall what their original name was, but they're one of the OG pools. And so the reason that I like them and I like the FPPS model is because over the past, so little backstory here, over the past about 8 or so years, I have been studying economics, just self-study. In college, I was a theater major, but I always found economics to be really interesting. And during that period of time, it was just a really changing journey for me, going from kind of a ignorant, pretty liberal-minded kid to a much more mature, libertarian-minded young man. So as I was just studying the economics and the way that our monetary system works, and just exactly how things like minimum wage are calculated, and the way that price floors are calculated, and the way that competition is like a race to the bottom, ultimately, in terms of just finding out where your supply and demand crosses meet. Brains Pool, uh, again, I was doing a lot of math on my own to sit there and just figure out, like, well, how do you, in a Bitcoin denominated market, ultimately figure out like what a minimum wage ultimately is? How do you calculate that in a Bitcoin denominated market? Where are the markers to make those types of decisions and calculate those types of numbers? And so Brains Pool had already done it. by the time that I was sitting around and I was mining with them, just kind of ignorantly, not realizing that we were doing the same math, or at least, me, maybe a more simpler version, where if you take into consideration that energy is your anchor and that's your race to the bottom, well, your bottom on price, well, now you are ultimately just measuring a Bitcoin denominated economy from that point, and finding your price floor from your sats per kilowatt hour ultimately. And so how much energy is going in to produce one Satoshi, and the shares equated to and I guess the shares or the labor equated to getting those sats to you. So brains had already done the work and shown that basically, like, your efficiency plus your time and your labor for your machines, all submitting these shares, they calculate regularly basically the minimum wage of Bitcoin uh, for price per share, which right now, currently, I think because the difficulty is raised, I'm not sure about the things affecting the minimum wage of Bitcoin ultimately, but it is 41 satoshis per share. That is what it is. And then from there you can calculate out like how much energy expenditure it is for the amount of hours put in over the course of the day, everything. So you got all these machines submitting price per share per terahash, and then that just goes into how much Satoshi you get at the end of the day based off of how many terahashes that you have. That calculation is also calculable to real world labor hours that people could put in. So, really, the fundamental backbone of the Bitcoin economy is mining, and it stems from setting up a mining rig in a town, in a space, in an area where everybody goes, okay, well, this is our price floor. We're generating energy as a community, and it's cheap and it's efficient. And this goes into our miners as individuals, plus the town's miners, plus the greater scale of some of the civics involved. And from there, everybody's labor hours can now be calculated in satoshis. So it's like, okay, cool. You know, the best way I can describe it is it's kind of its own universal basic income system where it self subsidizes itself because of energy. So, old economies back in the day, labor was essentially your self subsidy for the value that you would produce. And we're
Sure.
just going back to that, but instead of having it be derived from human labor, it's now derived from energy labor. And so much of the idea of us being laborious to produce value is now kind of the burden of that is taken off of us and put on to this beautiful system that Satoshi gave us, where it's like, okay, we're doing the work to be able to build this first, and that is still valuable based off of building it and getting it operational, making it function. But now everything that we produce outside of that can be measured in energy expenditure. So this kind of goes into my projects that I'm working on in the future. I want to be able to measure. I'm building a homestead, right? And I'm going to have ducks, cows, animals, all that good stuff. But I want to be able to measure the energy efficiency in satoshis of the things those animals produce, which can then be tied to a larger estate, which is my homestead, which then can also be further expended into um, economic tools like equities, like shares. So there's this principle in agriculture called herd share. You can buy shares of a herd of animals, and your dividend is food. Your dividend is
Sure.
the food that is produced and everything. That can be manipulated and obfuscated based off of external market prices from these grander spaces and all these other competitions and everything. In a Bitcoin denominated economy, the the price floor is the energy that is measured in the satoshis that is then measured in the production of your animals and the production of your estate. So now your estate is grounded in the most sound money and backed by energy, and your shares now have more value because it's measured in real production units of real goods, as opposed to arbitrary paper money and fiat that everybody does in the stock market in and of itself. So it's like we see these huge numbers ballooned up in the stock market about the value of these companies. How many of them produce nothing? How many of them produce the
Yeah.
same thing over and over again?
Most of
Well,
it's
it's
useless and no real way to quantify the valuations that they're being given, right?
exactly. And so they can manipulate their true value because their shareholders are just dumping money into their shares thinking that they have value. It's arbitrary. It's a fantasy. It's pretend. It's I think this has value, therefore I'm going to throw a bunch of money at it and everybody else is going to go great. Now let's all trade and we're all going to lose a bunch of money as soon as somebody pulls the rug out from under us. In a Bitcoin denominated market, that cannot be done. The only true metric that your business is ever going to be measured in is how productive it is in terms of energy efficiency. And that is where the root benefit of mining comes in as a utility, not just on a home scale, but on a greater economic scale to what you produce for your community and what other people in your community produce as well for you to do exchange of goods and services between one another. So I call that metric the proof of production. It is a true sound production measure. It would be like looking at the United States and seeing exactly what the GDP is of the United States based off of the actual goods and services that are backed by the energy that goes into it, rather than the pretend numbers that we say make the
No,
United
yeah.
States valuable.
This is great because if we started to optimize the world based on those principles that you were just highlighting, we would have a much better world. Communities would be much better. The economics of participating in these societies would be much better because they're rooted in, they're founded in, they're attached to something that is inevitable and necessary and powerful, which is energy. And so you can't really fake that, whereas there's all this other stuff you can fake. And so I love how you sort of equated it to a universal basic income of sorts, but so much better than that, because that is flawed. A, it's rooted in a fiat system, and B, you're basically being incentivized to not produce anything, whereas with what you're talking about, you're incentivized to optimize energy and value for your energy, and you're performing proof of work with mining. So on one hand, universal basic income, it's not really producing much of anything, whereas Bitcoin mining and energy harvesting and utilization is producing proof of work with the hardest money mankind has ever known. So it's two different extremes, right? And I think it's a really good illustration of how you're thinking in the future. You're thinking in the future and you're building for the future, where if we can get that taking root in people's consciousness and acted out and built into real life, we're going to have a much better future. And one thing I always talk to people about is that Bitcoin tends to kind of draw people into homesteading. Like that's actually my current obsession right now too, is how do I get a homestead, and then how do I build this mining setup with solar and maybe with renewable energy from a stream like a river and stuff. That's an obsession that I have, and it doesn't surprise me that you also are right in alignment with that. I had Kent Halliburton from Saz Mining on, and he was, same thing. He was talking about the gold rush back in the day and how we are now seeing a return to this more like community centric, small communities, small tribes, people harnessing the natural energy, and then how Bitcoin mining ties into all of that. And so, really cool to see that you're thinking about that. And you sound like somebody who's going to start producing the numbers for all of that and really like laying it out in a way that people can go step by step to kind of calculate this and make it a little bit more tangible and less abstract.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing I'd love to touch on ultimately, because you mentioned, just the way that communities used to operate back in the day based off of, the energy that they could harness at the time. Um, the original word that economics is derived from is a Greek word called oikonomics, right? Or it's called oikomia, I believe is the proper term, but I call it oikonomics. So on my handle, I call myself a Bitcoin macroeconomics oikonomist. Um, but oikonomia is the principle of the value derived from the home, from what you as a father and a husband and your wife and what your wife and your children and her as a mother, just the whole synergy of the family unit is derived in that sense in oikonomia. And so the family unit gets together. They raise children. They produce goods and services because they need to feed themselves. They find energy in their space in order to do those things. And then they meet like minded individuals in their communities and they build these things together and they find new sources of energy and they create new things and they help each other out. That is the bedrock of real true economics, is the harnessing of energy. And so the fact that we are returning to that and it is unstoppable now because we have an immutable piece of technology that just states that the laws of physics will not move the value of energy from what these machines do. I mean, thermodynamics, heat, energy, all of it playing into this huge role, saying this is your money, use it the way that your ancestors did. It's the same thing with gold. You would trade gold back and forth as a metric of the energy that you and your family and your community produces. We're just returning to that with vastly more sophisticated technology and vastly expandable technology. And it forces us to be efficient in the way that we find energy to keep this system afloat. And it's complementary to the way that humans have always lived their lives, which is energy efficiency and the efficiency of producing with the lowest amount of energy possible. I mean, like that's all we've ever done is find ways to just make things more efficient, so we're not burdened by the amount of energy that goes into producing those things. And we've just done it on such a massive metric scale now, and we're tying it down into a system with Bitcoin now, where it. I mean, the sky's the limit of where something like that could go, and the sheer amount of deception that's been played on us over the past 100 years or so
Mm-hmm.
can no longer be done because all of our money is now rooted in physics and rooted in true energy efficiency and production.
The laws of the natural universe. Yeah, that's it, brother. Like, yeah, you're tickling my nerd brain here because this is all the stuff that I'm extremely passionate about and I like to philosophize about as well. And I think people just look at Bitcoin mining as what's my ROI a lot of times. And so I hope that it's my sincere hope and wish that this episode and part two will bring you away from focusing only on the ROI and look at what you just said, Dan, about this renaissance that's occurring, this taking us back to the natural order of the world and of communities and homesteading and family and all of these different principles. I know it might sound abstract, but I think we laid it out pretty damn well here that this all, I mean, Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin itself just brings all of that back together and really gives us a fresh chance at getting away from the debasement and really the scam that's happened since our currency was no longer backed by gold, a hard asset, a hard bearer asset, right? Now that scam that we're in now can no longer be perpetuated onto us forever. It can go on, but it's only propping up a debt bubble and it's only propping up these fake flimsy values. And you can see people in real time fleeing to the countrysides, fleeing to put their money into Bitcoin, something that's not confiscatable, that's borderless, permissionless, and taking back their sovereignty and freedom. And so I hope that this has really helped to kind of tie all that together. And if you have that kind of calling in your heart and in your spirit, hopefully this has illustrated how this is all coming together and what's possible. And we have a lot more to talk about with all of that, don't we?
Absolutely. I mean, the conversation is ever evolving and never ending. Um, and we're early. That's the only thing I could ever say regularly is just how early we are in this. I mean, the fact that we're doing the things that we're doing now as such, I wouldn't call us a small scale community, but I mean, in
Still
retrospect
pretty
to the,
small.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's super small compared to the rest of the world as it functions now. I mean, if if we're able to continuously innovate and continuously show the benefit of doing the things the way that we're doing them, it's going to change the face of everything. It's going to change the way that we do everything. It's going to, it, like you said, I think a renaissance is upon us. And again, I don't think people need to be intimidated anymore about the prospects of Bitcoin because it is no different than running your household finances and it's no different than running your household utilities. It's that simple to sit there and learn it and take the time to understand it, not only economically, because I get that's a very daunting prospect, especially if you're still thinking in the fiat mindset. But if you think about it in that utility aspect, now it's like, great, I can reuse the heat. I'm making money by doing that. I'm innovating. I'm tinkering. You're it's no different than you trying to innovate a clever way to fix a pipe in your house for the time being until you can have a better part to go ahead and actually replace it. It's all meant to be wrapped up together, and uh, I think now more than ever, people can be confident in their ability to learn and go and understand these systems and figure out how they can begin integrating it into their life.
That's amazing, man. Man, I've got to say, not having been too familiar with each other before we decided to, jump on and create this episode, you never know how it's going to go and what all is going to come out of it. But I have to say, this is easily one of my favorite conversations that we've had here so far on the podcast. Just full of inspiration and excitement and like real raw passion for these topics on both of our parts. And so really appreciate you being willing to open up and just share all of that, everything from your build to like the way that you're thinking about all of this. I think people are going to gain a lot of inspiration from this and share what they've been building, and they're going to learn that there is unlimited potential here for them to get busy building. And I know we have a lot more that we want to cover, so let's wrap up part one here.
Alrighty.
I'm going to give you the floor if there's anything that you want to share with our audience before we wrap up and jump into part two. But in part two, we're going to go over things like integrating Bitcoin into estate structures, mining as a utility, mining as a base measure and price for floor for production, which we just sort of touched on, but I have a feeling we can go a lot deeper on that. The energy arbitrage, how you personally leverage credit without collateralizing your BTC, and then I want to know also at the end of in part two, how much of this is ideological for you. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to jump into in part two, but what do you want to leave everybody with in part one?
Pretty much the sentiments I would say I just said. And you know, um, it has never been easier to take time out of your day to start learning these systems. Ignorance is 100% a choice now. With AI, the internet, everything. I mean, people, especially in this space, are more than happy to have conversations about these systems, and I think everybody has beautiful layman's terms in making this much more accessible and digestible for the average person who doesn't even know a thing about Bitcoin. I get asked questions regularly. Can you explain this to me a little bit more simpler than, maybe what I've been reading about or what I've been hearing about? Can you help me get a wallet? I mean, that's something that I do is a little bit of Bitcoin consulting, and I help people regularly set up wallets. I help them understand why the system has value. I help them understand uh, the value proposition as anchored in energy, and their brains explode as soon as you start talking to them about that. And you know, I work in a nonprofit out here or at least a developing nonprofit out here in Florida right now. And we've just been having great conversations about how Bitcoin can be integrated into nonprofit systems, how Bitcoin can be integrated into the state structures, like I was just saying. We're doing a lot of legwork into figuring out how to educate so many different groups of people from all different walks of life that are in such different parts of the greater economic market that it's in my opinion, the education goes to how do you root your market value in Bitcoin, and how do you turn what you love to do into a hard asset. And that's what I love to talk about. That's what I love helping people figure out. And you can do it. You can 100% do it. It took me 7 months, and I went from zero to now. And I don't think I've gotten a better education than I have teaching myself, having conversations with people who are more than happy to teach me, and really just accept, like, better than school. Better than school 100% is go talk to the AI, go talk to AI, you mirror your ideas to it, have conversations with it, learn from your peers, and just go do stuff, go build stuff. It's you the sky's the limit, and it's yours for the taking right now.
Well said, brother. This is one of the few spaces left in the world that come to my mind where people are more than happy to share. There's not a lot of combativeness, right? You can reach out to the guy that you think is, this big influencer. They're untouchable. They're an expert in the space. They're too busy to talk to you. No, they're not. They're not. They love this shit and they're happy to connect with you and bounce ideas back and forth. So yeah, go talk to the AI, but also go talk to these human beings who are fired up about building the future, building a better future with Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining and home mining. Is one of my favorite aspects about this is it's open source and the people are open hearted, right? They're very happy to connect with you and help drive this forward. So very well said there, man. And in that light, I'm sure you are happy to connect with people. I'm kind of putting words in your mouth here, but I can just tell you're happy to help people. So Bitcoin_dandy on X is where they can
Two
find you.
two underscores, Bitcoin__ dandy.
Good distinction. I did not know that. Okay, perfect. Bitcoin 2_dandy. Hit Dan up if you have questions about the rig that he's built back there or anything else you want to know, or if you just want great conversation. Dan is definitely your man for that. Yeah, with that being said, guys, that has been part 1 with Dan, Bitcoin Dandy, of the Home Mining Podcast. It's his first podcast, so make sure in the comments you show him a lot of love. It's well deserved. Follow us on YouTube, on the Solo Satoshi YouTube channel, and on Spotify, the Home Mining Podcast. And be sure to share this episode with somebody that you think needs to get into Bitcoin mining or just learn more about the Bitcoin mining space.
All right. Thank
We'll
you
see
for
you
having
in the
me
next
on.
one.
Thank you again.
Thanks, Dan.